Okay, YouTube's up. Alrighty, so let's look at where we should be. All right, so this is, like I said, the module wrap up for hair, fiber, and botanical materials analysis. So go through this activity for the next few minutes and review that. Now, it's been, since we've been doing the other activities, it's been a minute since we have looked at this unit, but we do need to close this out. So Wednesday, we will have a unit exam on hair fiber and botanical materials. And um, I, I don't open. There we go. All right, so yeah, go through this for the next few minutes and practice that. And I'm going to take attendance, and then I'll come back. Also, remember that we had a couple of um, videos that are in the playlist that you can look at to review for this unit as well. And they talked about the different types of hair and where you're looking to get the forensic information from when you're doing hair samples. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and take attendance. Like again, I'm checking through GoGuardian, so everybody should be looking at uh, summary. Again, we are testing on Wednesday. All right. Good morning, Anthony. We are looking at the wrap-up module for hair, fiber, and botanical materials. So we're reviewing for the final, not for the final, but for the unit test on Wednesday. Everybody should be in Canvas looking at it. Analysis for hair, fiber, and botanical materials. Yes, looking at the vocabulary list is also a good thing. Also a good thing. All right. Thank you, Neve. I got you. Okay. And what I suggest you do when you go through these 20 questions is to go through, take note of the kinds of questions, because these are the kind of questions I'm going to ask on the quiz on Wednesday, and then go back and do it again. Look up the words that you weren't familiar with, go back through the unit, and um, make sure that you are able to answer all questions correctly. I know it's hard. You kind of have to go through it first to see what it is. Actually, there's 25 questions. So let's take the time to do that. Let's take the time to go through, see what questions you got right, wrong, and it'll give you when you look at your incorrect answers at the end, take note of the ones you got right and the ones you got wrong. And then go back and do it again. I doubt this one will mix it up on you. All right, so like I said, there's a lot of vocabulary here. So the best thing to do is to keep flipping back and forth, checking out your vocabulary. Also, there are a lot of questions on the uh, parts of hair, so make sure you take a look at that as well. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's try to go through some of that. Okay. Um, and maybe I'll give it another few minutes. I see some people haven't gotten all the way through this yet. I'll start with the first page. Again, know your parts of hair, know what the hair is made up of. What is this? Isaiah, you have an interesting background there. Or is that your ceiling? That's on your ceiling? Oh my goodness. All right. All right, so hair is made up mostly of keratin. That's the material, and that's in your nails as well. So your fingernails, your hair, it kind of made up of the same material, even though they look different. All right, the innermost part of the hair is also known as the medulla. So again, go back to your picture of the hair and look at the different uh, sections of the hair. The pigment granules that are located in which layers of the cortex. The outermost layer of the hair is known as the cuticle, and the hair is generally considered class evidence based on both entirely on morphology. Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit before going forward, and um, let's look at. We're coming up on pollen season because now that it's getting warmer. What happened last year is when it got warmer earlier, the trees started blooming earlier, so the pollen started coming up earlier. And okay, we don't want to do that. Need to go all the way back. Might have been better had I started from. Okay, so again, go back and look at um, these kinds of pictures that label the hair and the hair follicles and where it's coming from. So if you need to read this part again so that you know what the sections of the hair, so you can determine, and what can you determine by looking at the type of hair. So again, if you need to look at that video again, they went through and gave you all the different distinctions what the hair follicles will look like and what the outer coverings will look like depending on race and the way you can tell a human hair from an animal hair. So that's important. What was I watching this weekend? And one of um, one of the guys had a pet rabbit. So the hair that they took off of the jacket wasn't human. They were able to take it back to the lab and determine that was his alibi. I went to the vet to go pick up my rabbit. And so they were able to um, kind of rule him out because he was, or not rule him out, because he went to pick up his rabbit. That was his alibi. So hair samples are important to forensics. So make sure that you're reviewing that. And again, the video we watched better explained all the different types of hair and hair structure. There were three parts to those videos, so it might, you know, do well to watch them again. They're too long for me to run them back on for you right now, but you should go back and watch them for yourself, especially if you haven't watched them, um, if you were absent and didn't watch them the first time. All right, so make sure you go through these activities as well so that you know that what are natural fibers. And these days, clothing is made of synthetic fibers, which means it's man-made, it's made in the lab. So know the difference. So forensic scientists will be looking for what is natural and what is man-made or synthetic fibers. Polyester is a synthetic fiber. Cotton is natural. All right, so when you go to buy things from the store, and you look at the fiber label, these are the label things that will be on the label, and these are the animals that they came from. So look at those. Go through and look at that. That's a funny looking rabbit. And I was just about to say, looking at some of these will let you know why some of these materials are so expensive. The animal that they come from are rare, or it takes a long time for, like with silk, you have to spin silk. So that's why they're expensive. Um, this musk ox is rare. All right, so then you have plant fibers. So those are animal fibers. Now make sure you familiarize yourself with the different types of plant fibers. Okay, so these two plant fibers and animal fiber lists make a good matching um, activity. So make sure you take a look at those. Okay. So again, no hair structure, no natural, your natural fibers, plant and animal. And again, know your synthetic fibers. So most of the clothes we wear are inexpensive. And so they're rayon, polyester, and a blend. Nylon is a blend of one or two of these fabrics. So be familiar with what is synthetic and what synthetic fiber means. Also, look at the characteristics of these. Oh, let me go back and y'all are too young to, let me go back for a minute. They mentioned um, in the paragraph, did I go back too far? Yeah, I did. Or I didn't go back at all. Yeah, that I was trying to get back to this one right here. Um, the Wayne Williams case, where his whole, and he still claims he didn't do it, with all the children in Atlanta that went missing, and he was convicted of murdering all these children. And um, they they got him on fibers that were found in the car, and that's all he was convicted on, and not necessarily linking the bodies to him, but the fibers in the car. So uh, that's a case that you can, I might pull that up later just for you to read it, but that was, for most of you all, that was before your time. I think that happened when I first moved to Atlanta. Alrighty. Collection. No, go through and look at how they collect evidence, guidelines for collecting evidence at a crime scene. Make sure you go over that. So the clothing should not be removed from the deceased victim until the body reaches the crime lab. So they need to just bag the body as is. Don't try to collect evidence. Well, any loose or clothing or fibers collected at the crime scene should also be packaged individually. When the crime scene is a car, the seats should be covered with plastic to protect fiber evidence. In other words, they usually bring the car to the crime lab, so they cover it so that nothing is disturbed while in transport. If a knife has been used in a stabbing, the blade should be covered to protect adhering fibers. So again, it should gently lifted and put into one of those collection bags we talked about at the beginning of the class. Large items such as carpets, rugs, and bedding should be collected, folded inward to protect the surfaces prior to packaging, and that's kind of self-evident. For collecting small fibers, investigators should use forceps. A collection vacuum can also be used, but each new area will require new filters. Okay, and again, that kind of makes sense. All right, which brings us back to botanical. So botanical simply means it comes from plants. And so you have anything from the little burrs that will collect on your clothing to the milkweed that just blows from one place to another. Pollen from different plants have different types of pollen, so you need to know what the different pollen grains look like. So all of that is information. Um, One here it says hitchhiking plants, they collect on you might have gone through a field and went someplace else, so the person might have died one place, but because they went through an area that hitchhiked on their garments, they know where they were or where they came from, even if the body was found someplace else. So it might give a clue to the killer. uh what else? Okay, so I'll let you finish with the module wrap up. Hopefully some of you were working on that. I don't know if mine will take me to the second page. Resume. Yes, it will. Okay, so we did the first page, second page. All right. Type of DNA that can be found on a follicular tag of hair is mitochondrial. If from biology, um, if you remember your parts of the cell, mitochondria is one of the cell structures that are found inside each cell. They're the energies um, powerhouse. They call it the powerhouse of the cell. All right, what's the name for the muscles surrounding the hairs that give you goosebumps? And that is the erectile pilia. Okay, so the hairs pull the muscles contract and the hair pulls the hair, makes your hair stand up. All right, finding medulla. A medulla means that the hair or fiber being examined is from an animal. Hair that is with a medullary index less than 1/3. And that was another thing that was in the video. Make sure you understand the medulla index, then you know it's human. So that's another vocabulary word that you need to make sure you're aware of. Medullary index. knowing it higher or lower. Beard hairs are triangular in cross section. That was also mentioned in the video. But so again, watching those videos will help you kind of go through this if you're not for reading everything. All right. Vellux hair is a fine hair found on the body after birth, but before puberty. So again, knowing the age of the body will help looking at hairs, or would help to look at the hair to determine age. Initial growth phase of the hair growth cycle is known as an anagen, and we had those vocabulary words earlier, the different stages. Dormant phase of the hair cycle, when the hair is typically shed, is known as telogen. The middle phase of the hair cycle is known as catagen. I'm going faster. Natural fibers originate from plants or animals, okay? Because they are living things. That's why it's natural, because they're living things. All right, next one. And again, when you go through yours and go through and write down the correct answers when it gives you, because it'll give you your correct answers later. If you need to go back and do it again, do it again. But this is good practice, because I will be taking the test questions from this. The most common plant fiber used in clothing is cotton. Natural fibers appear to be less uniform than synthetic fibers. And that's because synthetic fibers, again, man-made fibers, they make a certain pattern for them, whereas natural fibers just tend to be natural. They tend to have irregular patterns. Fiber evidence can be collected in a paper bindle to avoid being lost or cross-contaminated. A substance composed of a large number of atoms that are usually arranged in repeating units is known as a polymer. And that's a little biology. I think that was in one of the videos as well. A nice picture of what a polymer is. And you might have remembered that from biology. The most common synthetic fiber is polyester. Like I said, most of the clothing we wear is polyester or a blend of polyester. That's why they're wash and wear. Wash and wear clothing is definitely polyester or nylon, or a blend of polyester and nylon. Synthetic fibers are manufactured by melting small pieces of material, then forcing them through a spinnerets. Oxidation tests involve burning the fiber to evaluate the ash behavior in the flame and the smells associated with the fiber. Okay, if you've ever caught clothing on fiber, you know that fibers have different scents. All right, fiber evidence is class evidence, and they had different breakdowns of forensic evidence. The study of plants and plant remains to aid in criminal investigation is known as forensic botany. So just always remember, botany is the study of plants. And pollen. Which one is it? Oh, okay. That was the one I put that was wrong. Okay, class was the correct. I'm not, tell me I didn't answer everything, but I had answered everything, but that one was wrong. Sometimes you answer too quick. Pollen evidence is helpful in determining the season when a body is dumped, buried, due to specific time periods when the pollen is released. So again, we're coming up on pollen season. So if somebody was dumped this month, it wouldn't have pollen on it. If they dumped it maybe in March, you might find pollen evidence. You wouldn't find pollen evidence in someone who was buried in the summertime, because pollen is seasonal. So that's helpful. All right, so I'm gonna give you the rest of the time to go through these, review the vocabulary, turn in your Who Killed Barry if you haven't done that, because that again, that's late and we're trying to stay on top of things. Ask questions if you need to, but again, study the diagram, study the vocabulary, go back and look at these questions again. But that's what the quiz on Wednesday will be about. And then we're going to go on to toxicology. Okay, this is our next unit. All right, so for now, just make sure you go through the hair analysis. Again, there are 3 videos that you can refer to um, in the playlist. Got a few minutes. All right, we got a few minutes. I have a video I can share with you. And then I'll also put it in. And we may not see it all, but we'll see most of it. Or I might just put it in, it's lagging. So I might just put it in, yeah, it's lagging. Let's see what's happening here. I might just put it on your playlist. And so you can watch, but this is for forensic biology. All right, so
School secrets. Nowadays present worldல கிரிமினல்ஸும் அதனால வர கிரைம்ஸும் அதிகமாகிக்கிட்டே இருக்கு. ஸோ அதனால அதை கண்ட்ரோல் பண்றதுக்காக ஃபாரன்சிக் சயின்ஸ் டிபார்ட்மெண்ட் நவடேஸ் டெக்னாலஜிஸை டே டு டே அப்டேட் பண்ணிக்கிட்டே இருக்காங்க. அதில் ஒன்று தான் ஃபாரன்சிக் பாட்டனி. ஃபாரன்சிக் சயின்ஸ் இஸ் அ ஸ்டடி அண்ட் அப்ளிகேஷன் ஆஃப் சயின்சஸ் டு லா. சயின்சஸோட அப்ளிகேஷன்ஸை லா டிபார்ட்மெண்ட்ஸில் யூஸ் பண்ணி நிறைய கிரிமினல் கேசஸை இன்வெஸ்டிகேட் பண்ணுறதுக்காக, நிறைய எவிடன்சஸை கேரி பண்ணுறதுக்காக யூஸ் பண்ணுறது தான் வந்து ஃபாரன்சிக் சயின்ஸ். இதில் த வேர்ட் ஃபாரன்சிஸ் வந்து எங்கேருந்து வந்துச்சு அப்படின்னா லட்டின் வேர்ட்லேருந்து வந்துச்சு. அதனோட மீனிங் வந்து ஃபோரம். ரோமன் டைம்ஸ்லலாம் தப்பு செஞ்சவங்களும் அதில் டிபேட் பண்ணுற ஜட்ஜும் ரெண்டு பேரும் பீப்புள் முன்னாடி வந்து டிபேட் பண்ண.
The information is good, but you'll have to read it for yourself. I don't think that you can, but it's good. So I just put it on the playlist and you can watch it on your own. Some of these are long, and I didn't want to do one that was.
From idea to submission, empower students to do their best work with Grammarly's comprehensive AI writing assistant.
This lesson is an introduction into forensic.
Just watch what we can.
Investigators use plants and plant parts to solve investigations. Let's start by looking at a case 5691. In this case, on Saturday at around 3:17 p.m., two hikers discovered a body in a local lake. Drowning was determined as the immediate cause of death, but further analysis of the body is needed to see what may have transpired before the actual drowning. Searching the nearby area showed footprints in broken branches. However, this is a very popular hiking trail, so it's indeterminate on if these prints and broken branches are related to the victim, a potential suspect, or just people hiking on the trail nearby. The next day, an abandoned car was found near the crime scene. The owner of this car is unknown, but there was pollen discovered on the car's tire. Searching more into the victim's home showed that the victim's car was still at his residence. So we know the abandoned car did not belong to the individual who drowned. As we go through this lesson, as a forensic investigator, I want you to keep in mind could you determine if this is an accident, a suicide, or a homicide? What kind of evidence should we be collecting from these crime scenes? What is relevant, what is not, and what kind of analysis can we do? What kind of analysis could we do on the body or the hiking trail or the car or the victim's home that could help us determine if it is an accident, a suicide, or a homicide? So what is forensic botany? Well, forensic botany is defined as the study of plants and plant parts to help solve disputes, whether they be criminal or historical. Under the umbrella of forensic botany is forensic palynology. This is the study of pollen grains, which is the sperm of a plant, and spores. They come in a variety of shapes and forms. Being able to identify these can be very helpful in forensic investigations. So what can we learn from forensic botany? Well, this could tell us the where did the crime occur, the what has transpired, who may have been involved, what was eaten before death. Examining the contents of a body is very, very important in trying to understand what they may have eaten recently or where they may have eaten. And was a body moved? When bodies are moved, odds are they're going to encounter some pollen or some other plant when they're being moved, so that information can be very helpful in determining where certain events have occurred. We can also calculate what's known as the post-mortem interval, or the PMI. This is the time between a person's death and the discovery of their body. This is paramount information in determining a timeline or a sequence of events. So what is a plant? Well, plants are in kingdom Plantae when looking at their biological classification. If you look at the history of life on Earth, we have a universal ancestor. First came early prokaryotes, then single-celled eukaryotes known as protists, and then we have plants branching out differently than fungi and animals. So plants are their own kingdom. One of the biggest things that makes them unique is that they are autotrophs, meaning self-feeder. Plants, in order to obtain carbon compounds to provide energy to their cells, have to make their own food through the process of photosynthesis, and that is unique to plants and some other early prokaryotes. Plants are made out of plant cells, and plant cells have three unique characteristics. One is they have a cell wall covering the outermost part of the cell. It is made of the carbohydrate cellulose, and it's there to provide extra protection and to help plant cells support each other. There's also a large vacuole or container in the middle of the cell called the central vacuole. This is there to help the plant store water and also applies a little bit of pressure on the cell wall to make it even sturdier. Plants also have a structure known as a chloroplast, and it is this chloroplast where photosynthesis, or the process that plants do to make their own food, occurs. Let's look at the anatomy of most plants. Not all plants have these same parts, but the majority of them do. The biggest part of a plant that you see immediately is the leaf. A leaf is a flat vascular structure, and it's used primarily for collecting light energy that's going to be used in photosynthesis for the plant to make its own food. But at the leaf, there's also an exchange of water, carbon dioxide, and oxygen between the plant and the atmosphere. Those leaves are going to be found on a stem. The stem is the long vascular support of the plant. It's the part that's shooting up out of the soil, and its primary function is to transport food and water. Below the soil, you will find the plant's roots. Roots are tubular hair-like structures, and they have quite a few uses.
I'm going to speed this
The
up a
primary
little
use
bit
is
because
to
we're not going to
obtain
get through all
nutrients.
of it.
Fungus. Fungus is an
Whoops, commercial.
A performance that truly matters. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
its own kingdom as well. It's in kingdom fungi. You can see here, we as animals are actually much closer to do their eating. This is where they're going to be breaking down decomposing matter.
Okay,
Both
decomposers
plants
are
and
important.
Animals, we eat our food. Plants, they have to make their own. After you acquire your food, you need to break it down into a form of energy that cells can use. So I want us to look at how both do this. So here you can see a plant cell and an animal cell. The primary structure involved in this is the mitochondria. The mitochondria found in both cells,
Okay.
which is again another useful identification tool. And plants often leave a lot of litter. Plants can leave a trail, such as leaves or decaying wood, that can be used to track back to a specific location. And it is all about location. Plants can vary by altitude. There are unique plant species that'll live closer to sea level that can vary dramatically compared to plant species that live at higher altitudes. They also vary by climate. The plants you'll find in a desert are different than you'll find in a temperate zone, or different than you'd find in a tundra. Why do we care as forensic investigators? Well, if I find any plants that are unique to the desert on the crime scene, that tells me that there was some involvement in a desert location. And each species has its own unique niche, its own unique location, temperature, and requirements for life, which can be used again for investigation. For example, the Joshua tree. Joshua trees are found only in the Mojave Desert, so if I were to find fragments of a Joshua tree on a victim or a suspect, that is a very clear indicator that they've been to the Mojave Desert recently. When studying plants around the world, it tends to be that one species dominates over an entire area. To go back to the Joshua tree example, the Joshua tree dominates the Mojave Desert. You may have noticed that if you visited Joshua Tree National Park. This tendency for plants to have one species dominating an area is referred to as a plant assemblage. And since we have these dominant assemblages, these are again another useful identification tool. So I want us to look at the unique ways that plants and fungi reproduce, because they often release things called spores, pollen, and seeds that can be very unique and therefore very helpful in forensic investigations. A spore is an asexual particle. Here you can see spores on a fern. What I mean by an asexual particle is a spore contains what can be planted and grown into a genetically identical version of the plant that released the spore. So these spores here for the fern, if I were to plant those, they will make genetically identical clones of the spore that produced them. Pollen, on the other hand, is a male sex cell. Pollen is the sperm of a plant. Sperm has to combine with egg in order to fertilize, and since it only carries half of its normal genetic material, it's going to produce genetically different offspring compared to that of a spore. Seeds occur when sperm meets egg. When sperm meets egg, plants can develop a protective structure, and when that's planted, that will make a plant offspring that is genetically different than the parents, because the pollen is passing down half of its DNA, and the egg of the female part of the plant is passing down another half. Why do we care about this for investigations? All three are unique in structure, so we can use that to identify where people have been, but also they're produced in large numbers. Spores, pollen, and seeds often are released by the hundreds, if not the thousands. So they're very, very abundant, and odds are if someone's in the nearby area, they've picked up one of these structures. Let's look at some spore producers.
All right, I'm going to pause this here
Primarily
because it's time to go. But do take a minute to finish watching it. It'll be on your playlist. Watch this one and not the other one. And again, look at your vocabulary and prepare yourself for the quiz on Wednesday. Any questions about that? Like some of this video you can skip through.
If you want to make more money in 2025, don't start a business. Try
Get
this
to the
instead.
commercials.
There's a little
in the middle of the flower is the part that would receive or collect pollen. That top portion is
Oh.
referred to as the stick with any
Yeah.
liquids. That can
Yeah,
be
you can
diatomic,
fast forward.
especially when drowning.
Look at
If you're
those.
drowning, you can actually determine the PMI or the post-mortem interval.
Make sure that you
When a person
remember
died by
PMI. We're
looking
always
at
going to be talking
diatomic.
about PMI, no matter which unit we're in. PMI is always going to be part of the forensic investigation. So again, skip through the anatomy parts of the video, but the other parts has good forensic botany information. All right, if you have no questions for me, Just make sure that you are prepared on Wednesday, and we'll see you then.